Wow. Okay, thanks. Good. I'll be trying it later on myself, but I'm not sure it will be so successful. Right. I want to go back to "She's Not There" because you were just mentioning, you know, what a big track it was in the history of rock, I think. Now, what about Santana? How did he discover it?
I don't know. I mean, I knew he covered it.
You still don't know?
No, but I mean, I've never met Carlos. Even though our road manager has, he ran across him one day when he was walking out on the street in Los Angeles, and they were talking about the song. But I just know that they covered it. I loved their cover version, and I was so knocked out because Santana were always one of my favourite groups, and that was the song that brought them back into the charts again after many years not being in the American charts. So that knocked me out as well. That it was happened to be my song that did that.
But you know, there's so much chance involved in the music business because we'd won a rock competition, as I said earlier on, and our producer had managed to get us some time in Decca Studios, and he just said, you know, we've got a studio time in a couple of weeks' time. Why don't you try and write something? And then he went on to talk about something else, and I completely forgot about that. And Rod just went away and wrote "She's Not There," came back to the guys, and we knew it was a special song. And I was absolutely amazed. And we recorded it on our first session. And our first session nearly only lasted 5 minutes because the engineer had been at a wedding all day. It was an evening session. And the engineer was very, very drunk.
Paralytic.
So it's all like a big chance, you know.
It's all chance.
I think should be encouraging to our listeners. A lot of musicians say, you know,
it.
How do I plan? How do I do? You need just a good chance, you know.
You need chance, and also you need stamina. You've got to. You have to keep trying, and that's what we did when we recorded "She's Not There." The engineer was very drunk, and eventually he passed out. He fell to the floor. We carried him and put him in a black taxi. And the assistant engineer took over, and his name was Gus Dudgeon, and it was his first session, and he went on to produce all of Elton John's early albums, probably the first 5 or 6 albums. So it was Gus's first session, and it was our first session. But so it's just chance.
אז אם מדברים על מקרה, איזה סיפור יפה, על טכנאי שהיה שיכור, על שיר שנכתב במקרה כי היו צריכים עוד שיר, והשיר הזה, שמענו אותו קודם, הפך להיות לאחד הלהיטים הגדולים בהיסטוריה של הרוק, just a little bit more from She's Not There, to remind the listeners what we're talking about. סנטנה כמובן עשה קאבר לשיר הזה, קאבר שמאוד מאוד הצליח, וזהו, הפך להיות אחד השירים הענקיים בעולם של הרוק. שמענו 2 שירים כבר, She's Not There, ו-Time of the Season, can you do that again?
What?
Yeah, okay. Every 2-3 minutes I'm going to doing it. Okay. Great song. I mean, obviously I'm not going to ask you how much royalty you got from the Santana cover, but I'm sure, you know, it's a great story, a great music story. What a shame, or maybe you'll correct me, that we don't have these stories anymore. What do you think about the music business nowadays, 50 years after?
I think I think there's some very good stuff around, but I think generally speaking, things are a bit more computerized. They're sort of less honest, and I mean, when we started, there were no sort of discos even. You know, if people went out in the evening, they would go out to the sound of a group playing. So there were many places where groups could learn their trade and could play, you know, 2 or 3 times a week and get really good live. And people also started in those days because they wanted to make great rock and roll music. Sometimes it seems to me now that a lot of artists start because they just want to be famous, you know, rather than thinking, well, it would be great to be famous, but we've got to really try and make some great music.
So in a way, it's very commercial. I mean, it was commercialized then, but it was a live scene. It was all happening. It was all really live.
It was very vital, yeah. It was at the time. You know, things go in waves and cycles, and and there are some great groups around.
Rod Argent, you're a legend for any keyboard player. We're going to talk about the keyboard. You know what? Let's listen to a track where there is a particularly interesting or unusual keyboard solo, so we can talk about it. Which one?
On the Zombies or Argent or?
Well, no, on the Zombies.
On the Zombies. I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
Well, let's go back to the, 60s and go through the songs that were hits at the time.
Yeah.
We've heard two. What about Tell Her No?
Tell Her No was a big hit. It doesn't have a keyboard solo. In fact,
Right.
it's Time of the Season and She's Not There out of the Zombies hits, really.
Right.
The ones with the keyboard solo.
Okay, let's hear Tell Her No. Yeah. What's the story of this song?
It was written very quickly in.
Everything seems to be written very quickly.
Yeah, but it was written in '65. It was in America. It was the follow-up to She's Not There, although not in the UK. I've been hearing some Burt Bacharach, if you remember the songwriter, and I was very taken with some of the voicings of the chords that he used. We were talking about jazzy things. They had more jazzy sort of voicings, the way the chords were constructed, and I wanted to use some of those in the song. And it was really after listening to some Burt Bacharach things that I wrote Tell Her No. Now I don't think Tell Her No sounds like anything like Bacharach, but that was the initial stimulus to make me think of voicing some of the chords in that way.
It's very interesting. So your jazz influences sort of got back together when you were in the States. הנה הפולו-אפ בארצות הברית להיט הגדול שהיה להם, kind of אחרי She's Not There, כמובן Tell Her No, וכאן יש השפעה מברט בכרך, שימו לב, מהמוזיקה האמריקאית וקצת הג'אזית שלו באותה תקופה, הזומביז, Tell Her No.
You haven't got our new album, have you, at all?
No.
Oh, God, Paul had one, we should have got one or something.
אין לכם פה את האלבום החדש שלהם?
And if she tells you with a charm, tell her no.